In my own words, who am I? I am a non-recovering thrill seeker, or as my dad puts it, a Kida pleaser. Kida is a term I don't know how many of you are familiar with, but this is something whenever you can't explain anything else, you put it down to that inner Kida that eats away at you till you do something about it. And so yeah, I started out my career in advertising and I reached senior creative director at J. Walter Thompson. I switched from there to writing for children. Have you heard of Sesame Street? So their Indian venture was called Gully Gully Sim Sim, and I wrote for them for about 5 seasons. So I actually went from selling cola to people to telling kids cola is bad for them. And just when my parents thought ki, beti settle ho gayi hai, I moved on to comedy. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I also ended up writing a Bollywood screenplay, which was produced by Salman Khan. And when I met him, he was wearing his shirt at the time. And my dad, a career Fauji, could never understand these mercurial switches in career, saying, what is it? Are you allergic to success? He's like, you reach somewhere and then you want to start from scratch. But I couldn't explain it. It's just that, I didn't think that that career was a full stop for me at that point, and something else would kind of present itself, and I felt the need to go ahead. Um, like Rinku said, this is always a case, okay? Kuch to log kahenge. So for starters, let me start with the Bollywood screenplay. I didn't intend to write it. It's just that I was discussing with someone, the idea came up. And when we were writing the screenplay, there were so many people saying, Arey, but you don't have any My Baap in Bollywood. There's so many screenplays lying on people's desks. What makes you so sure that, your screenplay will get through and stuff? But my point is, how can you even approach anything? How can you even start anything with the premise of what if I fail? Because if more people thought that way, then we wouldn't have great inventions. We wouldn't have a third front in politics. Abhishek wouldn't have married Aishwarya. I know you're hungry, but you can laugh. It's okay. But yeah, and so we wrote this story. We landed up in Bollywood with nothing but actually optimism. And 2 months later, we found ourselves sitting across Salman Khan, telling him the story. Never mind what happened to the movie at the box office, but at least we had one to our names. Um, Now, this is something I think most women will relate to, because I don't think anyone can hold us back as much as we tend to hold ourselves back. And no matter how confident we are, no matter who we are, and I'm not talking about just Indian women. If you've read Sheryl Sandberg's book also, Lean In, she talks about how women always take that back seat, right? We're always questioning ourselves. Like every single time I look at myself in the mirror, this inner voice pops up. Oh my God, look at your butt, it's so big. Oh my God, look at your pores, they're so open. They want you to be a motivational speaker. Why? The flu is adding to the irritation of that voice. But honestly, if we had a boyfriend like that, we'd dump him, right? Unless he was really rich. So I don't know why we can't dump this inner voice. And I think somewhere we're even, society and our own parents and just the way we are brought up, everything just adds to corroding at our self-confidence a lot. Like we are told, sit properly, look at your hair, don't laugh too loud. Everything goes towards don't draw attention to yourselves. And all I want to say is anyone who thinks today in this day and age that women are the weaker sex clearly hasn't stood in our way during a Zara sale. I just love this visual. Okay, I'm not going to be here, standing here and doing male bashing. I really am not. But I think there is a natural inborn swag to men that I'm extremely jealous of. Because, honestly, look at it. Lunch was announced, then they said, no, 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 some people are coming to talk. You guys sat down. If this was a male audience, they would have stampeded out. They would have stampeded out. And all we are thinking is calories delayed. Admit it. So yeah, I mean, somewhere, I actually get a lot of jokes. I shouldn't beat up on men because I actually make a living of making fun of them a lot. But I keep saying that I really wish that we had the kind of confidence men do, because I don't know how they can have that kind of confidence while they look the way they do. But yeah, let's talk about comedy. Actually, comedy kind of happened to me and then I happened back to it. I was working at the time and Colin Mockery and Brad Sherwood had come down to India. Do you know the show? Whose Line Is It Anyway? So they had that show on, and they take volunteers from the audience for different rounds. So they had some kind of a thing called sound effect round where one guy is trying to teach the other guy about Spanish bullfighting. And I was volunteering for every round, so there's only so long they can ignore someone. And finally called me on stage. So I'm holding the mic, and he's like, okay, so I opened my car door, and I went, eh? That was my job at that point. And we actually had a great time on stage, and at some point I started yelping like a dog. I just started doing all the sound effects I could possibly make. Whether it went with the story or not was besides the point. And when I was getting off stage, Colin actually said this. This is Colin Mockery. He's one of my heroes in comedy. And he told me that, typically we don't take women up for this round because women are reticent. And women only tend to hold the mic and go, and that's the only sound effect we normally get from them. And he told me, you should try comedy. And I wasn't even aware that stand-up comedy was happening in India at that time. And I got lucky because there were actually people there who were organizing open mic nights, which are amateur nights where people come and try out, stand-up. And they approached me after the show. And 1 week later, I was up in some pub trying to compete with attention against beer and chicken tikka. And in a city like Delhi, that is some ask. People are, used to eating and drinking and background singers playing, whereas we comedians are attention hungry. So it was tough going initially. And I remember, there used to be fun instances. Like people weren't used to comedy, right? So at some point they would come to a pub wanting music and we'd be sprung upon them like a surprise. And I remember actually asking this, like coming up there and people would look at you resentfully. You're like, okay, how many of you knew there was going to be stand up here tonight? Nobody. I'm like, well then, sucks. And honestly, comedy works in a very nice one-on-one connect, right? Like if I can look at you, I can kind of control the way, hopefully, the way you're thinking. But we had a split-level pub once, I remember. And so people are standing at the top and they were yelling down at the organizer, music, music. And this guy panicked and gave me the mic. So I came on, I was like, hello. And suddenly there was silence in the room because even in Delhi, a woman on a mic, wow, that's new. So all these guys came and stood Upar, and I was like, wow, you're going to listen now. They're like, yeah. I said, then why don't you come down? Will you come down? No. I'm like, well then, I'm glad I wore polo neck. And the night did go well, fortunately. But, it's been about 5 to 6 years that comedy has been around, and since it's actually drawing controversy, then it's becoming popular too. But back then, and even now, I think any comedian you talk to has always faced this one phone call. I used to get this a lot. हाँ जी मैडम वो 2 घंटे की कॉमेडी करनी है पैसे वैसे नहीं है लेकिन एक्सपोजर बड़ा अच्छा मिलेगा. And I've always said, तो जी आप ही कर लीजिए काफ़ी अच्छा मजाक कर लेते हैं. But I actually got an opening joke from it because my dad used to be like अच्छी भली सैलरी मिलती थी अब देखो लोग तो तुम्हें सिर्फ खाना और दारू दे के बुलाते हैं परफॉर्मेंस करने के लिए. So I got an opening joke out of it where I used to say, look, I've quit my job and I've updated my resume. My current resume reads, current profession, stand-up comedian. Current salary, garlic bread. But other than this, I think early days of comedy, the fun is now, thanks to media exposure and all, a lot of us are known, and news channels call us periodically to be that one little box on the screen, often defending freedom of speech, while the news presenter doesn't let us get a word in edgewise. No, the nation wants to know. And even now, after so long, even now, someone or the other always comes up to me at the end of the show and says, "You were really good, but what is it that you actually do?" Yeah, I'd like to address the elephant in the room, the female comic, because actually a lot of journalists don't know how to handle us. They come to us, and this is a question that we periodically ask: what is it like being a female comedian? I'm like, I don't know. I've never been any other kind. So yes, it is unusual because apparently women are not supposed to have a sense of humor. So this is another question I got. Oh, what do you say to the traditional mindset that women don't have a sense of humor? I'm like, it proves yet again that men are not listening. Because I mean, I really don't know how anyone can, like, I don't think anyone's asked a male teacher how is it being different being a male teacher versus a female teacher. But there are pros and cons to every gender. I did get noticed because I was a female and it was an unusual profession. But there are a lot of shows that I don't do because I'm a female and I need to be choosy, like especially the shady ones. Madam, Bangkok में dealer meet है. मैं कहा सर लाइनअप में क्या क्या होएगा जी, रशियन डांसर उसके बाद आप हो। भैया स्टेज पे पोल होगा ना। So and also the fun part is being a female comic, a lot of people have these preset notions about you. Okay, you go to any corporate show and there are, okay, our society still has these little traditionalist values, right? You're up on stage, you're telling a joke, you might have like a point to make in the joke, or it's just a naughty joke for the sake of being a naughty joke, and somewhere in the male head a bulb goes off. अरे स्टेज पे ऐसी है तो लाइफ में भी ऐसी होएगी. So you end up getting a reputation of being a fast woman. And I feel bad for PT Usha because she had to run a million races to get that title. Uh, this one I had to do because the fun part is nowadays corporates are pushing the gender equality agenda, which is as amusing that you have to push it as an agenda. You don't set an agenda to go to the loo, do you? And so I get calls from people like, oh yeah, so yeah, we are into women empowerment. So we would like to hire a female comedian. So yes, that's why we are calling you. How much do you charge? I thought female comedians came cheaper. And I promise you, we get a lot of calls from like institutes, okay? We get these real glowing letters talking about how they love our work, how they've followed us, not literally, how they've been following our body of work and how they appreciate us and how they would be truly honored if you came and spoke at their institute, which is awesome, except all those letters start with, "Dear Sir." मतलब जेनेरिक होने की भी हद हो सकती है, right? And honestly, initially, when I started doing comedy, it was new for people, right, to have a female around. And I'm going to be mobile for this, so do you have like a handheld mic or something? So, just to encourage me, I guess. So I think their heart was in the right place. I will give them that benefit of doubt. Just to encourage me, half the times I used to be, thank you, introduced onto stage as, "Welcome onto stage, the woman with the balls of steel." It happened so often, I actually gave up on life. One day I walked onto stage like this. Just. I'm like, I really don't know how you guys walk with these. These are very inconvenient. Or maybe mine are just bigger. Cheap demo, but there it is. And the thing about being, I get called and they're like, okay, आपकी comedy अलग कैसी होगी? Or corporates are calling the other spectrum of the gender biases. They think because I'm a female, I will be a clean comedian, which I mostly am, for whoever wants to hire me later. And the I don't know how. my comedy has to justify itself to be as good as a man, you know? Like, for example, this other slide I have for you. Gender schmeido bar, because somebody once actually gave me advice that when you go up on stage, you know, don't think of yourself as a woman. And I used to find that confusing because I talk a lot about my experiences, right? How can I dissociate myself from my gender? I am going to come at you and talk to you about things I've experienced and hope that you have too and connect with it, and that is what makes me unique. But then, if you think about it, all he was trying to say was, when you're up on stage, you're just a funny person trying to make people laugh, and don't let your gender hold you back from doing that. That's the only thing that he was trying to say. And so I was like, okay, challenge accepted, because even now, someone or the other will pop up and think that, you know, we are privileged to be women, which we are, but the thing thrown at me was, don't take advantage of the fact that you're a woman. I'm like, why not? Someone will, might as well be me. And I swear to you, even now, you know, the rules, of course, are so different from men and women. When you're up on stage, and if a guy has thrown in a curse word, people will be like, ha ha ha, that becomes a punchline. If in the course of your joke, you throw in a like a curse word or something, the Indian judgment system comes at you, sounding like, I got so used to this sound, I remember getting a joke out of it because I remember pointing at an auntie ji saying, don't worry auntie ji, I'm used to people like you pointing me out to their sons saying, beta, aisi wali nahi chahiye. And you know, the fun part is that somewhere sexism is so rooted. Like, you're talking about tier 2, tier 1, I'm talking about people like you and me don't even realize when they're actually being sexist. Like, my show was being promoted, there were 3 female comics on that lineup, and I remember a Twitter feed, one guy saying, oh, you know, chick comedy is not my kappa. I'm like, I talk about my parents, I talk about traffic jams, I talk about diseases, I talk about deaths. Men can talk about their boyfriend, their girlfriends, their wives, the size of their junior, but they are not called jock comedy. And I'm not going to rhyme with chick at this point. So again, you know, I already told you the kind of introduction I used to get. And I've even met men, okay, at corporates who will be like, yeah, of course we believe in gender equality. Hey, Lata, make my tea, press my feet, have my babies. So that mindset has to change. And but while we are talking about that, I also want to address this to females. You know, I'm all for feminism, and I am a feminist, and I'm very happy to admit it. And there are a lot of negative overtones that have come into feminism now. And I remember posting a tweet about why is it becoming about male bashing. And I remember one feminist website got after my life and trolled me and trolled me and trolled me till I tweeted saying the irony of a feminist website trolling me for expressing an opinion. So, you know, all I'm saying is women are not so weak that we can't take a joke, are we? Exactly my point. So actually open on this joke. Let's try it with you guys. Feminists in the room, make some noise. I hate you all. It's because of you, I now have to work for my living. So the only sign-off thought I want to give to you guys is, you know, have a strong sense of self, but please have a stronger sense of humor and live life like someone left the gate open. Thank you so much.